Your angels are speaking to you. Do you hear them? Welcome to The Calling of Light with author and empathic spiritual tarot reader Anne-Marie Odell. The Calling of Light offers direct, empathic insight and relatable spiritual topics, interviews with special spiritual guests, and straight talk call-in readings. Kick back and enjoy free-form spirit tea with Anne-Marie, the way you like it best when you want to simplify. Here is your host, Anne-Marie Odell.
Thank you very much for joining me on The Calling of Light at OMTimes Radio. Today's guest is Kat McCarthy, who has a blog readership of over 17,000 on the care of succulents, as well as a thriving Facebook group that teaches all the ins and outs of having healthy, beautiful succulents. The drought has made water very scarce, and many areas in the United States are even paying people to go to native plants, succulent or cactus, that would require much less water. You can have a stop-the-car garden spot in your yard just by going by native plants in water-scarce areas. Kat's blog is the succulenteclectic.com. You can find her group, the Succulent Eclectic, on Facebook. And I found her on the internet as I was beginning to make my first project, a succulent fairy dress, with no idea how to work with succulents. And because of her and her knowledge on her blog, I learned how to put that dress together, and it's still alive. Here is a show that I dedicate to her, and with the thank yous of getting me through the world of succulents. I call this spiritual gardening, which I also call Church of the Garden, an all-conclusive gathering of people who love their plants, and even talk and touch their plants, indoors or outdoors, and a sort of Mother Nature bonding with God, Earth, and botanics. And whether the garden is a food source or adds oxygen to the inside of a home during winter or illness, plants can give as much peace as a church or a therapist's office. Succulents and native desert plants are returning to add beauty and an option to dying, thirsty yellow yards. I believe that she can help some of us to be able to make those changes to those less water-hungry plants. She is here to not only teach you and me the ins and outs of these beautiful, what I call alien plants, because they are so different, but give us tips, and for those who wish to, with the aid of their landscapers, an excellent drought garden option. Kat, how are you today?
I'm fine, thanks, Annie. Thank you so much for the lovely introduction. It's great to be here with you today.
It's like a dream come true. I just really was thinking, I wonder if she would do that, because I feel as if you are one of those people that has been instrumental on my quest with succulents, which are now, by the way, taking over half my living room.
I'll bet.
So my first question, and you laughed at this one, and I know that, well, maybe not this one. At what point in your life, Kat, did you find that your passion for succulents was leading you to teaching others?
That is fairly recent for me. Actually, when I grew up, I never even knew a gardener. I was not the least bit interested in plants. I thought they were kind of cool, to see passing by, but it was never anything that I made a personal connection with. Then when I was dating, who is the man who is now my husband, I used to tease him because he had all of these plants in a tiny little apartment. He just had an abundance of plants indoors and outdoors, and he gave them such care. I used to tease him, that they were plants. They weren't the stationary pets he seemed to be treating them as. And it wasn't until we bought our first home together that I was bitten by the gardening bug, and I fell hard. But I would say that he has been my inspiration all along.
Oh, how cool.
It is very cool. I've learned a great deal from him.
And when you say that you fell in love, I do believe that people who have never had pets and learned the care and the maintenance of having a wonderful pet can be just the same in its gratification as having a room full or a yard full of beautiful plants that they need you. This sounds very bizarre, but I equated a lot to the feeling I had, again, to nursing, because when I had a child, I breastfed and I felt deeply needed. And when I had plants and I saw how quickly they respond when you don't care for them right, or they sense that you have no love for them, it was almost the same way. I felt so needed. So growing up, were you influenced by anyone who gardened at all, or were you a plant person? You said you were not, but did you have a tendency to be bitten by other bugs in your life that you would get fanatical about?
Not per se, but I was raised with dogs and I always had a cat. And so I know what you're talking about, that ability to nurture is a magical thing. And we do become very, very attached to our plants. I started my Facebook group during the early stages of the COVID lockdowns, and so many people turned to caring for plants when they could no longer interact with others. And there is something magical that happens there. Now, a lot of people like to say, oh, I'm such a crazy plant lady. I actually talk to my plants, right? You mentioned that earlier. But what I have found to be really essential for gardening in general, and especially succulent care, is learning to listen to the plants. So I definitely do my fair talking, and I have read, Dr. Seuss or Winnie the Pooh to a few plants more than once. But
I saw that on a blog post once. That made me laugh.
Totally true.
And
but I do learn so much by listening to them, and that I think is where the magic happens. They know what they need. We just have to pay attention. They'll tell us.
And that's why I call them aliens.
Yes, I can see that.
Because of all plants I have, one of the hardest things, and I've been a plant addict pretty much all my life, was that they were on a whole different wavelength where I had to be fanatically attentive to the plants, the more green gloss leaves or vegetable gardens. Succulents seem to be more independent. They didn't want all my care. They didn't want me to water them, or they would turn to mush. It was or so much. And so it was very difficult at first for me to maintain less and know that I was giving more.
That's a perfect way to put it too. And I do find that experienced gardeners do struggle more with succulent care than do people who have never tended a plant before, because succulents' needs are so incredibly different from any other plant. It wars with our instincts. We know that plants require X, Y, and Z, and yet those same things can easily kill a succulent. And I agree.
Could you give us an example of that?
Well, as you say, the consistent watering, right?
Yeah, big one. That's a big one.
It's bone deep in gardeners that you don't just leave a plant to its own devices for weeks, even months at a time without giving it water. I'm in Southern California, and the song does not lie. It never rains here, but the succulents will thrive for months without water, where another plant could never tolerate that. the kind of handling you can do with succulents. A gardener wouldn't think that you could just lop off the top half of a plant and have both halves thrive. But
like
that
an octopus.
Exactly. And with succulents, that's not only something you can do, but there are times when it's really best to do that.
And when would that be?
If you've got a succulent maybe that's overgrowing because it's not in sufficient light, sometimes a beginner will think, wow, my succulent's doing great. Normally they only grow 6 inches tall and mine is 36 inches tall. Mm-hmm. But the reality there is that it is stretching. It's reaching for the sun that it knows has got to be up there somewhere, and it's just going to go for it. And that's sort of what you were saying earlier. So many times plants rely on us. They're always needy. But succulents are sort of the rugged individualists. They'll take care of it, right? They need more sun. They got it. They'll just climb to incredible heights, reaching for that sunlight. So that's part of what I talk about when in listening to the plants. They know just what they need. Succulents do. And they'll tell you exactly what they need. We just need to learn how to understand that.
And how do you feel about succulents becoming a part of the drought gardening scene? Do you feel like kind of your time has come to maybe do interviews like this and to help people as they begin to landscape with less water and more tolerant plants, or not?
I think it's marvelous, and I absolutely cherish any opportunity to help inspire or educate others. But I think it is incredibly important that we pay attention to our planet and what our planet needs, and the plants are just little bits of that. So, there are inspirational posters running around or gifts that say bloom where you're planted, right? That's something that we people need to learn. But it's so true for our plants. If we try to take tropical plants and get them to grow in the desert, or desert plants to grow where we have, terrible winter storms, things like that, it just doesn't work out as well as if we can give our plants the kind of conditions that they have evolved to thrive in. And that's part of what we need to do. So lawns in Southern California, bad idea. We've got terrible water shortages as it is.
Right. And so do you feel that this drought gardening or learning to place succulents in that landscaping is going to be beneficial for many of these people?
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. As well as learning to appreciate a different type of beauty.
Yes,
so we
exactly.
All know the perfectly tended lawn, and we all see that lush green velvety lawn as beautiful. But if you look at the neighbor and the next neighbor and the next neighbor, and everybody's got the exact same thing, that's not natural, right? The earth didn't grow to have a single plant just for as far as the eye can see. Diversity is really the strength, not just of our country, but of any ecosystem. And I think being able to see the beauty in that is an important thing for all of us.
I like that. That's cool. And yeah, succulents do add the diversity in the plant world where multi-races living together in peace can be. Because I do have as many succulents and as much as I do botanicals, but they all thrive together and they all live in the more plants that require that more intense grow light sun will definitely be with my mother-in-law tongues or the more botanical tall plants. But yeah, it's all about diversity. You are so correct. So are there specific places around the nation where people maybe can see how succulents can be done in interesting and maybe quirky or cute ways that would pop with creativity? You mentioned on one of your posts that you went to the Succulent Cafe. Was that you?
Yes.
Or was that?
Yes.
And what did you think? And what was it like?
Most people in the country won't have access to walk into the Succulent Cafe, which is unfortunate because it is unbelievably inspiring and fun and a joyful, whimsical place. But if you just Google Succulent Cafe and click on images, you'll be amazed. One of the things that they do so brilliantly is upcycling, where they take something that most of us would just see as destined for a landfill, and they turn it into an inventive, creative planter where succulents will thrive. I love that. I don't have that talent to be able to look at something and instantly see its possibilities, but I do cherish it when I see others do it. And I'm learning. I'm getting better. So I've got like a pair of brake discs that I set one on top of the other and put a screen underneath and created a succulent planter. And now that it's rusted over, being out exposed to the elements, it's fabulous. I love it.
Awesome.
In our group, we sometimes do upcycling challenges. So, you've got an old cheese grater or a broken teapot or a sifter, and you turn that into, instead of something to throw away, but you turn it into a magical succulent container. And that you'll find endless inspiration.
And I had to laugh at one of your posts about the use of a drill and how you had learned to be brave with a drill, and how you found how different ways that we could all drill holes on the bottoms, because that was really, really important, isn't it, to know drainage?
Yes. Now, some upcycling things like colanders and sifters and cheese graters have drainage built right in, but you're right. Learning the proper technique to drill ceramic or metal, as well as wood and concrete, you can turn anything into a planter. And that's a really fun experience. Although, fair warning, once you do learn that, you can't stop yourself from seeing it. You're at a hardware store and your head is spinning and say, "Ooh, that could make a great planter. Oh, how about that?" And it's a lot of fun.
Yeah, I think it could be too. And I saw some of the pictures on your blog post. Or no, it was it was on Facebook that showed the different planters and things from the Succulent Cafe. Where are succulents originally from?
Actually, a lot of people tend to think that they're all native to deserts, but that's not the case. There are succulents native to alpine regions and tropical rainforests, and just a wide range. So many of them are native to North America, yes, but also South Africa, some in Europe, some throughout the Mediterranean. So there are succulents that have adapted to thrive in many widely divergent climates.
What would you say is the most fatal mistake that people make that begin with succulents?
They will choose a succulent based on the cool look, which is easy to do, right? They have this fabulous sculptural shape. The colors, the textures are wonderful. They will fall in love with one and then put it where they want it to be, as opposed to where it can thrive. So they might take a succulent that really requires full sun, and they'll put it in a cute container in their bathroom or in their bedroom. And that's just never going to work. It's sort of like taking a polar bear and asking him to live happily in southern Florida, right?
Right.
In the desert. That's never going to work with the plants. Right. And so again, it's a matter of learning to give them not what we want to give them, but what they want to receive.
And we'll be right back with Kat McCarthy on the care and upkeep of having healthy succulents in your drought garden.
Conscious media for conscious minds. OMTimes.
Ascending Hearts is no ordinary dating site, but a spiritual dating site with a purpose, to link you with your soulmate. We engineer the serendipity so you can trust that you will attune with someone that has the same matching vibration as you. Ascending Hearts, the conscious dating site for the spiritually aware. Try Ascending Hearts for free. AscendingHearts.com.
Hi, my name is Anne-Marie Odell, and thank you for inviting me in for Tarot and Coffee. I offer 37 plus years of accurate, honest tarot channeling. Spirit comes through me as a feeling, an inner knowing. I call the angel frequency. As you say your first name, I close my eyes and shuffle my well-worn card as I go into a deep calm. By phone, Skype, or Zoom, contact me at thecallingoflight.com.
This is Kathy Beal, host of Celestial Compass, featuring astrology you can use. Celestial Compass points you to what's going on in the sky and what you can do with it down here on Earth. We also explore fun, effective, and cosmic tools for navigating this adventure we call life. Join me the first and third Monday of the month at 5 p.m. Eastern Time for Celestial Compass. It's enlightening, entertaining, and empowering.
You came across someone struggling with hunger. How would you recognize them? Would you notice an 8-year-old girl who's not excited for
summer break because she may not be having lunch again until September?
Or a war veteran who's having a hard time landing
a job and getting back on his feet?
I am the 1 in 8 Americans who struggle with hunger. I am hunger in America.
Hunger can be hard to recognize. Learn why at IamHungerInAmerica.org. Brought to you by Feeding America and the Ad Council.
I also discovered in succulents and through reading your blog that the shape of their leaves or the texture of their leaves when they become really, really thirsty and it's time to water. Could you tell me something about that?
Absolutely. That is how I definitely recommend that beginners, especially, learn how to care for their succulents. It's part of what I talk about listening to them. What makes a succulent is a plant that stores excess water in their roots, stems, or leaves for the plant's later use. So when it rains today, they don't take it up and drink today. They take up the water and store it to use during drought times later. Those structures where they store water, if you think of them like a water balloon, right? You have a very loose balloon that has very little water in it. It fills up, fills up big and full, and it's nice and plump and taut. And you'll see that reflected in a well-watered succulent's leaves and stems. They're just really perky and full and plump. As they, over time, draw down on their stores of water to support themselves during the time that they're allowed to be dry, you'll see that the leaves start to become more flexible first. So you won't see it visually. You will if you use touch to learn through succulent care, which I highly advise.
Yes.
You'll feel them first being really bendy, but if you don't do that, you'll slowly see them start to wrinkle. Once you see wrinkled leaves, it's time to water, and those water balloons refill with water.
Why do I have such a hard time keeping mother of pearls alive?
Honestly, because I bet you love them. I bet that is a plant that you look at and just, wow. If there were any way possible, you want to really do well with that plant. Am I right?
It enhances any grouping it's in. It just,
I agree.
Yeah. And yet I could have 4 or 5 that would be absolutely gorgeous, but then for whatever reason, the mother of pearl, or what do you call them? Is it
the senecio, the string of pearls? Yes.
String of pearls. For whatever reason, they become smaller. They don't have that big, round, lush look.
The reason I guessed that this was a particular favorite of yours is those are the succulents people tend to have the worst trouble with, is when you've got an actual, this is my favorite succulent. Oh, I love this succulent. And for some reason, I always fail. And yet my neighbor, who doesn't even like this plant,
grows
for them, right?
Yes.
Why is that?
I don't know. Why is that?
It's because we start treating them differently. When they're a special favorite, we give them extra love and extra care. And okay, we've got another succulent right next to it that is fine. It's not one of our favorites. We'll let that one go for weeks without watering. But this one that we love, we water it and we tend it. We may spray it a little bit of extra water. And all of that we're doing, treating it differently from other succulents that we don't care about quite as much, we're giving it stuff that it can't handle. We're over watering. We're over fussing. If you treat your string of pearls like any other plant, in fact, I like them because the peas, right, the pearls, they wrinkle so nicely when they're thirsty. And yet most people say, oh, I would never starve my string of pearls for water. Oh my goodness. But they need the dry time just like any other succulent. But again, it taps into our need to give what we want based on our love for the plant, as opposed to our ability to say, no, we're going to give this plant what it wants, not what we ache to give it. So give it more time, give it more space.
I try not to water the plants, but it seems for me that they just start out, as you said, big and lush, and then they start to, and even though maybe I may not water them for 2 weeks or 3 weeks, they still seem to get smaller. And I guess I just, maybe you say, and this is why I call succulents aliens. I do believe that they feel us more intensely than my floral plants do, or my, they just seem to have a wavelength that I find I have to match with my wavelength of, I see you, you're there, I admire you, but I'm not going to look at you. And it's very strange. It's just
It is. No, I understand.
And I think that until I learned that sort of telepathic connection with succulents, the ability as an over nurturer, I tend to be someone that needs to be needed. But if I'm somebody that has to learn how not to care, how not to dote, you're right. That begins to be therapy. That begins to be the ability to do less is more.
But see, I think I would like to tweak that approach just a little bit.
All right.
You're right that succulents don't need as much intensive care as most plants. But I think it's magical the way any kind of plant helps us connect with our native compassion, our ability to care and reach out and nurture others, whether they're plants or animals or other people. So I don't think the issue is to care less. I think it's to care the way they want. I wrote an entire blog post on ways to show your love for your succulents beyond.
Oh, I haven't read that one. I'll have to check it out.
And that's where I get to, you want to care for your plants, you want to show them how much you love them, and you don't want to kill them. Lay down the watering, but there's no reason to not look at them, not talk to them, not touch them. Many plants can't tolerate touch the way succulents can. Succulents have no problem being handled. Take pictures, learn their botanical names, talk to them, listen to them, write poetry about them, right? I mean, enjoy the heck out of having these magnificent plants in your life. Just learn to say, I love you without a watering can in your hand. That's the key.
And how would you equate that with the human mentality of relationships?
Well, we hear so much these days about love language, right? That I do this for you because that's my love language. That's how I show my love. But you do something entirely different. You never do what I do. You do something else because that's your love language. We're starting to learn to pay better attention to how our fellow human beings both express and best receive love. I like to do big, splashy celebrations for Christmas and birthdays for my husband. And he thinks that's nice. But that just, he's come a long way to learn that, okay, she needs to do that to show how much she loves me. But what is more meaningful to him is that I'll stay up until 2 a.m. reading with him about a particular project that he's working on, or show him my trust in his ability to do important things for us. What is meaningful to him is different from perhaps what I most want to give. but I better show my love by giving him what he needs and wants than in what I want to give. And it's the exact same thing with plants.
I like that. We'll take a break right there, and we'll be right back with the Calling of Light on OMTimes Radio with Kat McCarthy.
And this has to be like something else. That's very difficult, I think. I think that's really hard to try to memorize all of that. Whereas if you learn to understand the whys behind the whats that we need to do, I think everything becomes much more natural.
18. Yeah, but something you had told me just a little while ago about what it is you would like people to know, and what would that be?
I think that beginners to gardening, especially succulent gardening, can easily become frustrated by there are so many things to learn, and there are. You'll never, ever know all there is to know about gardening, not even about a special slice like just succulent gardening. But if you try to memorize a series of things that must be done, the kind of soil they need, but it needs to be right for your climate. What's right for my succulents won't be what's best for yours. If you try to learn all of the many different things that you need to learn about what to do and what not to do, it quickly becomes overwhelming, and it just is hard. Whereas I think if you learn the whys behind the whats, I think everything just makes so much more sense. And again, I sort of relate that back to learning to listen to the plants as they tell us what it is that they need.
I live in the Midwest, and the cold weather has set in, the cooler weather. How low of a temperature can succulents tolerate? I know that they become almost more colorful with cooler weather, don't they?
Some do. Some become much more colorful in cold weather. But to ask what minimum temperature succulents can experience and still live, sort of like asking what minimum temperature can animals experience.
Okay.
Because there are some succulents that will curl up and likely die if they experience below 50 degrees Fahrenheit.
Wow.
Where there are others that are just perfectly happy to grow and thrive outdoors where it gets to be 30 degrees below zero. So that's part of the importance of choosing the right succulent for your specific growing conditions.
So for my indoor plants, I'm not good at the names, Kat.
That's okay.
The flower kind, you can what is that called?
Blasfeldiana, I bet.
They in the succulent dress, it's like all little flowers, but it's the beautiful. They're all it's very much the same in order to give her dress unity. Now that kind, I felt very nervous about being outside in cool weather. Was I wrong on that?
If it's the Calancho Blasfeldiana, no, you're right. They do fabulously well indoors. You can find them in grocery stores across the country.
Yes.
They thrive indoors, and they will bloom most of the year. And there's a way to get them back into bloom after they've stopped. No, those are fabulous, but they will not survive a frost. Whereas there are other plants that actually really, a lot like non-succulent plants, they really prefer experiencing the frost.
And what ones would those be, Kat?
Sempervivum in particular are fabulous for cold weather climates. There's about half of the sedums also thrive in cold weather.
Yes.
So those are really good. There's a couple of agave that can handle very, very cold temperatures. Some cactus even, Opuntia,
really?
Some of them are hardy down to zone 5, which is well below zero.
You can see, so sedum are succulents?
Yes.
Because my entire yard, just because monarch butterflies love them so much,
they do.
We call them autumn joy. And
yes.
I have white, and I have deep wine, and I have the pinks, and they've kind of taken over the landscape.
They will, yeah.
And just when everybody was saying that monarch butterflies were dying and there would be no migration, I was on vacation to the Carolinas to see family, and my husband says, "Oh, Annie," he says, "you would not believe we've got hundreds and hundreds of monarchs here, and they're all over the sedum." So
Yes.
I think that's one very cool thing about them. And I'm surprised. I didn't know they were succulents.
They are. And in fact, that specific one, the Autumn Joy, is hardy in Alaska. I mean, no problem
Really?
dealing with an Alaska winter and coming back bigger and better the next year. Yeah, they're great.
Wow. And I remember this old lady next to me said, "You see this plant?" And it was right on the foundation of her house, didn't get that much light. And she says, "Here, just break it off and stick it in the dirt." And I said, "Oh, come on." And she says, "No, really." In the next year, it came up and it was gorgeous. So
But as a gardener, right, as an experienced gardener, you knew that it couldn't possibly be that easy. It wouldn't work that way.
Right?
No,
right.
That's what I mean. Yeah. And you're right. They are that alien to normal plants.
Right. And what else would we need to know?
Well, you had asked about, don't they get brighter colors in the cold weather?
Yes.
Those that are hardy, those that can survive that cold weather, absolutely do. That becoming more colorful when exposed to very cold temperatures, often the same plants get more colorful when exposed to very hot temperatures, or even to too little water. The reason is they're responding to stress. And you'll have some succulent enthusiasts say, "Oh, that's a beautifully, perfectly stressed plant because it's showing such gorgeous colors." But then many are concerned and they say, "Oh no, I don't want my beloved plant to experience stress." And that is something that I find interesting, because we are, as human beings, we tend to see stress as negative. We think it only has negative connotations, but that's not really true. Stress is just a change that requires a physiological change in the living being. So exercise is a form of stress. Extreme happiness or extreme excitement, those are stress.
And we all know that tough times make strong people.
That's right. That's right. But nobody really looks out. They don't deliberately seek out tough times in order to be stronger, but they do the same thing. When we exercise, we're making things harder for our body so that our muscles grow stronger, so that our bodies are stronger and more flexible and better able to do more, right? That's
Right.
all a form of stress. And just as our bodies respond to the added stress in our environment, succulents do too. So that more beautiful color that comes out, that is the result of certain pigments that the plants make in order. There are some pigments that they make to withstand excessive heat and sun and UV ray exposure. So I think of that sort of like the melanin in our skin. You and I are both
It's like
very
a suntan.
right? But if we go out a little bit at a time in the sun, we get darker, and the darker skin protects us from the sun. Same thing with these plants, but their pigments aren't brown like ours. They may be blue or red or
Oh, cool. I like that.
really gorgeous, right? But then they also have other pigments that act like an antifreeze, because you got to wonder, how can a succulent that by definition stores excess water in its tissues, how can it possibly survive freezing? Right? Why doesn't the water freeze, expand, and explode out the leaves?
Right.
Because these special pigments act like an antifreeze.
Really? So all those sedums I have in my yard are filled with antifreeze, basically.
Yes, that's exactly right.
Different temperatures.
Exactly.
The Real Conscious Connection. OMTimes Radio. IOM FM.
Humanity Healing International is a small nonprofit with a big dream. Since 2007, HHI has been working tirelessly to bring help to communities with little or no hope. Our projects are not broad mandates, nor are they overnight solutions, but they bring the reassurance that no one is alone and that someone cares. To learn more, please visit humanityhealing.org. Humanity Healing is where your heart is.
Grab a cup of tea or a glass of wine and tune in for inspired conversations with publisher Linda Joy. on Tuesdays at 2 p.m. Eastern. Linda creates sacred space for leading female luminaries, empowering authors, heart-centered female entrepreneurs, coaches, and healers. A soulful venue where guests openly share the fears and obstacles they've overcome, wisdom and lessons learned, and the personal journey that led them to the transformational work they do in the world. Inspired conversations to empower you on your path to authentic, soulful living.
If I could be you,
and you could be me,
for just 1 hour.
If you could find a way
to get inside
each other's mind.
Walk a mile in my shoes.
Walk a mile in my shoes.
Walk a mile in my shoes.
We've all felt left out. And for some, that feeling lasts more than a moment. We can change that. Learn how at belongingbeginswithus.org. Brought to you by the Ad Council.
Walk a mile in my shoes.
I'm recently been having quite a bit of problem with, I'm recently into trailing succulents. Yes. I love trailing succulents, and I think they add so much to the perspective of when you have low and medium and high plants.
Absolutely.
But string of turtles, I've been having a hell of a time trying to keep them with color. I don't know if it was because the grower I get most of them online. Mm-hmm. And I don't know if it's very pale, and it's not like the string of pearls that I see, or not string of pearls. I guess I'm doing that, aren't I? I'm starting to care too much. I've been looking at the colors, waiting for that almost peace sign to be, mm-hmm. Real strong and prominent in the string of turtles, but it's not happening. What am I doing wrong?
With that one in particular, it may be. Remember, I told you that there are 3 ways that color is intensified in succulents: mm-hmm. excessive heat and UV, mm-hmm. Excessive cold, but also water. So let's say that your string of turtles really thrives when you water it, let's say, every 17 days. I don't recommend getting on a rigid schedule like that, but just for this conversation, if watering it every 17 days is perfect for it, and it's nice and plump and fine, then waiting to water 19 days gives it a little bit more stress for the water. It aches a little bit for the water. And in doing so, it realizes, aha, we're coming into a greater period of drought. I need what? That's right, a protective pigment that will help me withstand the additional stress. So I don't recommend stressing tremendously, just again, slowly acclimating it to slightly drier. So let's pretend it is every 17 days. Go to 19 days. Stay at 19 days for a little bit, then move to 21 days and give it a chance to slowly adapt. And I think you'll see the better color. Now, in general, your trailers need bright indirect light, like your string of turtles. It needs bright indirect light. If it's in too little light, it will become very pale as well. It also needs good air circulation. But if everything else is perfect for it, add a little bit of stress. Let it go another couple of days before you water.
So when I bring my succulents in for the winter, I have a ceiling fan going to give it aeration, right?
Good.
And I also have a hard time, and like I said, I love all plants. So I have also not hundreds, but a jungle. Mm-hmm. with my, on one side of the room, and I have my succulents on another altogether, because I realize their requirements are different. But on the other hand, I need a mister for my calocasia or my stuff like that. Sure. Now, is having a mister going to hurt my succulents in the house?
No, especially if they can be separated a little bit. Okay. Too much humidity in the air right around a succulent can cause it problems. But with the fan keeping the air moving, they'll probably be fine, especially if they're not right in among the plants that are getting the misting.
I also use grow lights.
Perfect.
So, my problem is I hate having a lot of pink lights that make me look like a hemp house. You know?
Yeah.
But is there a specific kind of grow light that works best with succulents? Do you know that?
Yes. The pink and blue LED grow lights that you're right. They use for marijuana are great for your plants. However, they're so hard on our eyes. So that means, I mean, for me, I have the devil of a time looking at plants under that kind of lighting. It's just painful. Mm-hmm. There are full spectrum white LED grow lights, and the prices on those have come down so much in the past 10 years. Those are just as good for the plants, but they're easy on our eyes. So it's really a win-win.
So we don't need to have the pink ones then.
No.
And
the
in
full
my
spectrum white are the LED grow lights that I think do best.
The succulents.
Right. Again, because they give them what they need from the pink and blue, but so they get, the succulents are cared for just as well by either the white full spectrum or the pink and blue lights. But I can be much more comfortable in my own home with the white. So
right.
So that's the one I recommend.
Okay, that's good to know, because at this point, the only ones I seem to be able to handle is turning the dial down on my grow lights to blue and white, which I was reading last night, that blue lights are not grower lights. They tend to make plants, especially house plants, less growth, more for beginner plants. But it did say that it would be okay, but pink was needed. Pink was needed. So I'm glad to see that white full spectrum is going to work.
Well, the white full spectrum, of course, includes the pink and the blue and all the other colors.
But you just don't see it.
Sunlight. Exactly. Because out in your yard, your plants are getting that pink spectrum. Right. So the full spectrum, it more accurately duplicates the look of sunlight.
Do you have a brand, or do you have a type of grow light for succulents that you especially like?
There are several good brands out there. I can't give you a brand right now, but what I definitely go to is the white full spectrum LED. They're far less expensive to run than the fluorescent. They're not going to.
They are.
Oh, much less. Yes.
Huh. Okay.
So less expensive. Still, they give you much more light for drawing much less electricity. They won't overheat. And again, easy on our eyes while giving the plant everything it needs.
Okay. Well, Kat, thank you so much for being a part of my day here. And
it's been a pleasure.
I have learned a lot, and I didn't know that my sedum were succulents because they thrive. And I guess I also learned to look for more wrinkles in my plants. Yes. I certainly look for them in my face. Now I can start to look for them in my plants, and it'll be a good thing.
That's right. We celebrate the wrinkles.
Yeah. Thank you, Kat.
My pleasure. Thanks so much, Annie.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
I wanted to thank Kat McCarthy for taking the time to be my guest today. I have always been surrounded by beautiful house plants, many different kinds of plants. Today I was reading an article on what kind of plants do millennials like. And the article is from The Daily. And I would like to offer you some insight in your life. What are 7 houseplants they most love? First of all, millennials love houseplants. Best of all, there's a houseplant for truly every person out there. And while lush tropical plants might be gorgeously opulent on Instagram, a lot of millennials have to contend with the reality that they live in dark apartments with limited natural light, as many of us do. Houseplants are definitely the plant type of choice for most millennials, says qualified horticulture magazine gardener Thomas O'Rourke. There are likely many reasons for this, but his take is that gardeners in this age bracket are much less likely to own their own homes than the older generation. They're also much more likely to live in big cities where space is at a premium and apartments are the norm. But there's an upside. Lack of outdoor growing space means that houseplants offer the only real solution for many green-thumbed millennials, he says. Of course, many houseplants are also tolerant of neglect, which again lends itself well to the typical busy schedule of the average millennial. We've talked to some plant experts, including O'Rourke, about which plants millennials are currently obsessing over. And if you're looking to bolster your collection before winter's sunless days and warm weather provokes another round of natural selection in your plant assortment, there's some great ideas from the in-the-know plant people. Here is a list. Chinese money plant. The disc-shaped leaves of this have been known to add a lush splash of green to millennial apartments. Beneath its verdant leaves, however, hides a secret. While it doesn't look like it, it's actually a succulent. So it doesn't require watering as frequently as other leafy houseplants. Even though it doesn't look like most succulents, which are small and contained, is a medium-sized, playful plant. Not only does it fit into the busy lives of a millennial, but it's also an easy plant to share. This has been a crowd favorite over the past 4 years due to its playful silver dollar-shaped leaves. It's also incredibly easy to propagate and share with friends. Millennial, thanks to endless Instagram mentions, this opulent plant graces many a Gen Y living space. Many millennials dream of living somewhere with high ceilings or with a sunroom where plants can exist in all their glory. It's also everywhere on Instagram, so it's hard not to want. The money plant looks gorgeous too, even if your current living situation is less than Instagram worthy. Its growers with large, beautiful leaves, fully mature, which unfurl over the course of a week to reveal holes almost as unique as fingerprints. Best of all, it's drought tolerant, meaning it'll survive, though maybe not thrive, when your roommate forgets to water it while you're on vacation, which also helps Generation Y. Another very popular plant is Swiss cheese plant. It is the sibling of the big battle, great for bright but indirect sun, and requires a bare minimum of maintenance. You just water when the soil is close to dry. And it's a great way to channel the spirit in small spaces. The Swiss cheese plant is growing in popularity because it has features of the money plant, but it's much more compact. I think millennials like it because it suits apartment living. This means you can feature your Swiss cheese plant in unique ways. It's not limited to a basic planter, but also take it with you when you move, because it's a vine. You can use it as a growing wall decoration, but it's still a size where you pack it into a box or car when you're moving. String of hearts. Now, the string of hearts is often photographed draping down over a bookshelf, adding a little drama to even a simple apartment. If you're lucky enough to have an apartment where the sun shines in, you'll have a lot of luck with this little guy. Its popularity with millennials is because it's so small and cute, and it fits into their limited apartment space. Being not a millennial myself, I would have to say it's also one of my favorites. How about the hanging air plant Terraria? Yes, probably the chillest plant out there. Air plants basically just require oxygen to survive, meaning that if you're terrible at looking after anything other than yourself, or even yourself, this plant might just make it despite it all. Because they look so unusual and can seemingly live entirely off nothing but the nutriments and moisture in the air, they fit the bill for Millennial and Generation Y households. Looking for visually arresting plants that require little upkeep. Sometimes they're called sky plants because they can be hung from the walls or ceiling, making them an excellent choice for homes with very little space. How about the fiddle leaf fig? I love these plants. Their leaves are just amazing textures, round and lush. And though they aren't great around pets or kids, but they will make your place look damn good. These plants are native to Central Africa and grow up to 2 meters tall, adding a dramatic tropical feel to any home. And we cannot forget the succulent garden. It seems as if with the millennials and Generation Y, there is that need for a low-maintenance garden that can look amazing and awesome, as well as and easy to care for. So when you buy a plant for your millennial, succulents are a winner. They love moderate indirect light and only need watering on occasion. And you please listen to today's guest, Kat McCarthy, on the care of these wonderful plants. Succulent plants are more and more popular every single day. And love, love, love from the millennials who can go to school, go to work, or have them under a grow light. Whichever way, they're beautiful, stylish, and easy to take care of. And there you go. There are 7 of your wonderful plants for your millennial or Generation Y that would be able to thrive with their collection of 7 most popular plants. I am Anne-Marie Odell, host of The Calling of Light on OMTimes Radio. My show's mission is to share the lessons I've learned from my tough days as a single mom and use them as a beacon to give you truth, hope, and encouragement every Monday at noon Eastern Time at The Calling of Light on OMTimes Radio.